I found it very helpful to look at the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish and then back it off and break it into smaller consumable chunks. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. I'd like to share with you the big picture of what we're after as far as the lab environment that we're building. And then we'll peel it back a little bit and walk through the individual components that make it possible. So here's the big picture look of what we're going to create the environment to support. And that is this. We have two Palo Alto firewalls. We have PA FW1 here on the left, and over here on the right, PA FW2. And for IP addresses, I'm going to use firewall 1.11 on all of its interfaces. And on firewall 2, we're going to use .12 on all of its interfaces, including one interface on each Palo Alto firewall that we're going to use for management, so we can connect to and control and work with those firewalls. And then we have some other interfaces here, 1/1 going to the inside network, and 1/3 going towards the untrusted internet cloud that each of the firewalls will also have. Then behind each of the firewalls, let's say this is the headquarters site over here. Maybe this is site 2. At headquarters site, we've got a client back here, or that's what we're going to build. We want a client back here that will have to send traffic through the firewall to get out to the pseudo internet or to the real internet, either way. And also the same thing for site 2. We want this client to be able to go ahead and send traffic and interact with the live internet. And that traffic will have to be routed, in the case of client 2, through firewall 2, in order for that communication out to the internet to succeed. All right, so let's talk about the ingredients to make all of this work with EVE-NG. Number 1, what I'm using is a VMware ESXi host, which is a computer. In my case, it happens to be an older rack server behind me, that instead of running an operating system like Windows or Linux or something else like that, it's running VMware software called ESXi. And VMware will actually issue a license for ESXi. They call it, I think, vSphere Personal or something like that. But you can actually get either an eval for ESXi, or you can have your own license copy free of charge if you only need a single copy, meaning you only need to run it once. So in my lab environment, check, I've got an ESXi host. In fact, let me show you the details of it right now. So let me bring it in. Here it is. This is the graphical user interface to connect to a single individual ESXi host. So with the host selected, it is a PowerEdge R630. Now, like 5 years ago or 7 years ago, these are super expensive new, but used, they're really, really affordable. And I know affordable is relative, but they're a fraction of the cost. And so what I did is I went out and I looked at the VMware compatibility list as far as what hardware would support the latest version of ESXi, because that's what I wanted to run. And the R630 was one of them. So to find that, you just open a new tab. And I'm just doing a search for VMware hardware compatibility. And right here, you can select a version of ESXi. And so from here, if you have some hardware and you want to find out, okay, what version of ESXi am I able to support, we could go here. And then you can specify the system type. Let's say it's a rack-mounted server like I have. And if we scroll in the partner name, mine happens to be Dell. There's Dell and Dell EMC, and we'll click on Update and View Results. This is showing us all the Dell systems that support 7.0. It also indicates here they support the updates, Update 1 and Update 2 as well. And if we wanted to further refine, look at that, there's like 25 pages of support there. However, if we want to refine it down, we could do, in my case, I've got the R630. I could just type in 630 and then Update and View Results. And then that would show me what's supported. So using compatible hardware, I installed the ESXi host, and that's what we're seeing right here. So this is my Dell PowerEdge R630 server with 24 CPUs and about 128 gigs of RAM. And currently it's running version 7 of ESXi with update 2, but it doesn't have to be version 7. I mean, if it was running 6.5 or even 6.0, you're still going to be able to provide the virtualization services that the EVE-NG environment needs. All right, so we've got the ESXi host running. The next piece that we need is EVE-NG, and I am using the Professional Edition. I think it's, in fact, I just had to renew it. I launched it the other day and said, your license is expired like last week. And so I went online. It was like US, it was under $150 for the renewal of the Professional. That's for a whole nother year. So I've got EVE-NG Pro deployed as instructed at the EVE-NG website. And that's running as a VM on the ESXi host. So if we click here, here's the details for it. So I gave mine 46 CPUs, and I gave this guy also 120 gigs of RAM. This VM doesn't require that, but I had it available, so I threw it at it. So I've got the EVE-NG Pro virtual machine running as a virtual machine on the ESXi host. And currently, if we click on the EVE-NG Pro virtual machine and go to monitor, so at the moment, this VM isn't using too much CPU or other resources from the ESXi host, and that's because we don't have a lab built yet. And inside of EVE-NG, let me go ahead and bring down a category over here. In EVE-NG, if we want to use various images, we need to set them up in EVE-NG. So for example, if you want to run a Windows server or a Windows 10 host, you need to take the prerequisite steps in EVE-NG to go ahead and place the images so those will work. The same is true if you want to run Cisco. You'd place the images there in EVE-NG, following the setup instructions at the EVE-NG website, and that will facilitate using those images inside of EVE-NG. The same thing is true for Palo Alto. We would need to import those images into EVE-NG, following the instructions on the EVE-NG website, and then once we've imported them, we could then include those devices, in this case our Palo Alto firewalls, in the topology. And even though the current flavor is 10.x, there's so much similarity between 8.x and 9.x and 10.x that if you, for example, had an older image for Palo Alto, let's say 8 or 9, that would still get you most of the way there because they're so darn similar across the board. So there's more in common with these versions than there are differences. And let's talk about licensing for a moment. If we're bringing these images into EVE-NG, the images themselves don't have licenses involved, meaning it's just the functionality. So if we have, for example, Windows and we bring it into EVE-NG, if the image we brought in comes in as an eval, that eval is going to time out over time. Maybe 180 days or whatever the Windows gives us. A slightly different example would be a Cisco iOS, which we bring in and we're deploying. If the flavor of iOS doesn't need a specific license associated with it, we could very likely just have full functionality, again, based on the version of software. And for Palo Alto, just having the image, if we bring it in, that's going to give us quite a bit of functionality as far as practicing and working with a Palo Alto environment. For example, we can do network address translation. We can set up routing. We can set up some basic security policies. However, what isn't available, unless we provide a specific license for it, is on these Palo Alto firewalls, we won't have the actual function of a lot of the next generation firewall features, like looking for viruses, looking for malware, looking for intrusion events, and so forth. And here's one of the cool things. Even though some of those advanced features are not going to function, for example, we're not literally going to protect this client against malware because we don't have the license for it. That doesn't, however, prevent us from setting up the policies, including looking for malware and other next generation policies and features that we can practice with and set up. And so the question often comes up, well, is it worth setting up a lab environment if I can't verify each and every advanced feature? And I would say absolutely yes, because you can still practice the configuration and a lot of the meat and potato foundation networking and stateful firewall features will still be functional. So I would say even if you don't have a license, it's still a benefit to have it in a lab environment for practice. Now, having said that, to have these images inside of EVE-NG takes a few steps to import them. Now, those steps are well documented at the EVE-NG website, but what I'd like to do in the next video is just reinforce those concepts with you, show you where you can go for that information. So if you want to, you can set these up as well. So I'll see you for that, my friend, in the next video. Until then, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.